This podcast and every other podcast I make is supported by Patreon. If you want to throw the Patreon $1, you'd be helping to support these relatively niche shows, but there are other memberships that include some special bonuses too, such as completely unedited Q&As, ad-free versions of content, unedited versions of shows, and even the ability to play games with me. So if you want to support some independent games industry podcasts, check out the link in the description. Hello everyone, I'm Alanah, and this is Roger Clark. Welcome to another episode of Video Game Acting 101. But Roger, you were not initially a video game actor. You have a pretty long history of a very different kind of acting. For anyone who doesn't know who are you? What do you do? Where are you from?
Hello everybody, my name's Roger Clark. I'm a professional actor. Most of you guys would probably know me as Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2. It was a blessing and a job. It was a real joy to work on. But yeah, you're right, Alanah. I trained in the UK and I started out in theater. And that eventually migrated towards, film and voiceover work. And through voiceover, I started doing voice acting, and then that led on to performance capture for games and stuff. I moved back to the States. I was born in New Jersey, and I grew up in Ireland. Yeah, I am initially a Yank. Yeah.
Oh, no way. Do you have a dual citizenship?
I do. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
score.
Handy.
Yeah, we were just discussing before we went live that you toured and went to Brisbane, which is where I'm from, and then I probably may have seen you perform Macbeth in Brisbane in 2010. I think it's pretty likely. Assuming you were there every night. What role did you play?
I was Macduff.
Oh, yeah. Very cool.
Spoilers, he kills Macbeth.
What? No, come on.
It's 600 years old, but yes, he kills Macbeth, yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I remember we had to bring these big, huge claymores. They were stage claymores, obviously, so they weren't sharp, but it was still a real pain trying to get through customs.
Australian customs does not make things easy.
Oh, yeah, I remember because I was coming from Hawaii and I bought this shell and they were so polite, and the Australian the immigration, they were polite. And he says, yeah, well, this shell is it's illegal to bring into the country.
Dad?
And it's either punishable by a $100,000 fine or 3 months in prison. So I'm just going to go and have a little look and speak
That's
to
really good, Roger. Most people can't do it.
God.
Yeah.
But he was saying it in the nicest way possible because of the inflection at the end,
Always that fucking inflection at the end. It drives me nuts. I think Aussies are generally pretty polite. Then I don't think they're anywhere near as uptight as your usual American immigration. I think they're pretty chill.
They are. Then it's a wonderful, wonderful place. I love the beaches.
Made it myself.
Yeah,
appreciate it. It was a lot of hard work. Yeah,
one of the westerns that Dan Houser recommended to me when I got the job for Red Dead 2 was actually an Australian film with Guy Pearce and Ray Winston. I think it was called The Proposition. It's set in the Outback in the 19th century.
Yeah.
Yeah. So technically it's not a West. It is a Western, but it's set in Australia.
It's not very West. That's all.
I know, but for all the themes and everything, it's totally Western. And yeah, it was a great film. I recommend.
To touch on that, how did Arthur Morgan come about? You do have a history as a theater actor, as we've vaguely covered. Was it something you auditioned for? Did you do the full accent when you auditioned? Did you submit multiple tapes? And how long does that process take for you to actually get cast as someone as now iconic as Arthur Morgan?
So I worked on games before, both as a voice actor and with performance capture, and I loved both. But I'm particularly fascinated with performance capture. So when I moved back to New York, I let my agent know that. And funnily enough, this breakdown came along called Untitled Video Game Project.
Great.
I thought, oh, wow. Because as you know, I mean, they're all called that at the beginning. They don't say boo about anything.
I've seen a lot of really funny ones, though, that they're Star Wars sides, but they really pretend they're not. And so they call, instead of saying Jedi, they'll say, Templar. But it's so clear that it's Star Wars, and you're like, come on. But they just swap words around. It's very entertaining.
And I loved gaming, and I think mocap is fascinating because you don't have to change locations, and you can be in the jungle in the morning, and you can be in the desert in the afternoon, and the only limitation is your imagination. That and having a great animator who can come and help you by showing you what your environment actually is, because without that, it's really difficult to try and pull something out of literally thin air. But
Yeah.
so to answer your question, anyways, Alanah, yeah, I got the breakdown, and my agent says, "You like video games, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it was funny because I just recently returned to gaming. At the time, I bought an Xbox 360 because it had been a while.
Mm-hmm.
And the fella at GameStop says, "What you like?" I said, "Oh, I like sandbox, open world, story driven stuff." So he recommended Skyrim, and he recommended Red Dead Redemption.
Mm.
And I had just finished Red Dead Redemption like a week before.
No way.
My first audition for 2, and I didn't know it at the time, but they
Yeah.
did ask me to show up in cowboy boots with and to prepare a West Texan accent.
So it was an in-person audition?
Yes, and there was what was weird about it is usually you get the sides in advance, but this time no. They wanted you. They said we'll give them to you when you show up.
Wow. So
Which
you had a
weird.
character breakdown. I imagine no plot, no sides.
Yeah, and the sides will be provided at the audition. So they obviously wanted to see how quickly you might be able to read a page or
I would guess they're worried about leaks, surely, with Rockstar.
Oh, totally.
Right.
But the sides that I ended up having didn't end up in the game either. That was something that the writer specifically wrote just for the audition, which is usually the case, you know? So it was, I remember it well, too, because it was Arthur walking, or what was eventually to become Arthur, just me doing some Texas accent at the time. And I'm in a bar, and I'm shooting the shit with the bartender who's excited because his daughter was coming into town and he hadn't seen her for a while, and we're being friendly. And then at the end of the pages, I went, "Well, someone put a price on your head, so I'm afraid it's the end of the road for you. Now you want to do this out back where there'd be less of a mess?" Of course I have, and that was it. And then I didn't hear from them for ages, and I was doing a theater down in Florida when they had a callback for me, but I couldn't make it, and because I was down in Florida.
Oh my
God!
So
I thought, that's it then. Then a couple of weeks later, they checked my avail again, and then it was a couple of auditions, and then a couple of days in the volume before an actual contract was offered.
Wow!
Then I worked on it for 5 years.
It's such a long time. I've always, like, I've spoken to Troy about this on Play Watch Listen. The amount of time that you had to do that game and the amount of rewrites I imagine that happened in a 5-year process. Did you ever have any trouble keeping track of who Arthur was?
I actually didn't, because I got my sides as they came, you know, and once I realized that I was the protagonist of the next Red Dead game, I was a little nervous. I won't be honest. I won't lie, because I was such a huge fan of John Marston, and I knew how much he was loved by the fan base. And you know, I remember when, no offense to the actor who played him, but I remember when I took spoilers, but when you take over as Jack in the epilogue, you're like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Yeah,
I miss John.
Yeah.
And I knew that's what they're going to think as soon as they found out about Arthur, you know?
I don't
At least that was my suspicion.
I don't think that happened.
Well, when the first trailer introducing Arthur came out, there was a bit of that.
Okay. But I feel like it just got overshadowed really fast. I don't doubt that you would remember that. I have no recollection of that happening. I feel like people love Arthur.
That's eventually what mostly has seemed to have become the case, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah,
it's kind of amazing.
So I guess as a Red Dead fan, yeah, that you were afraid that people were gonna reject this new protagonist because it wasn't John.
Yeah, because John's the OG. You know, there wouldn't have been a second one had it not been for the quality of the first one. You know, so obviously there was a lot of things that I wanted to live up to.
Yeah,
I thought as long as we do just as well as the first one, I'll be happy.
So it wasn't a struggle to keep track of the character.
No, I had a pretty good knowledge, even though we didn't shoot it chronologically.
Yeah.
But I was pretty good at mentally putting the pieces of the jigsaw together. What was difficult would be sometimes we would start a scene and then we might not finish it until 3 years later.
That's so wild.
And that was when the animators were invaluable, because I'd be like, what the hell they would show us what we did from 3 years ago, and that would refresh our memories. And then one of my things I was paranoid about would be like, I wanted to keep the accent consistent, because over such a long period of time, you just want to make sure you're doing the same thing as you were 3 years ago. Yeah. So they helped me with that as well.
Did you do I don't remember what the word is. Like, did you have someone help with the accent, or was that just something you pulled
No,
out?
no, I
No
had
way.
I mean, if I asked, can you play me a bit from 2 years ago, they would totally do that.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was auditioning for it, I was doing theater at the time, and with a fellow from Flagstaff, Arizona, helped me out.
Oh, cool.
But Arthur eventually became some sort of amalgamation of like Texas and Southern. There's a little
Southern. He's
Southern in
just
there
Southern.
too. Got
So
the soft
you
R.
didn't have training beforehand to nail that accent down?
No, I worked on
Oh,
accents a lot, and there's this great website called IDEA, which stands for International Dialects of English Archive. And it's really handy because you can find out every dialect from every region that speaks in the world that speaks English, different ages, different genders, and it's very, very informative. So I would listen to that, and I worked a bit on that. And they did have some dialect people for like Haiti. I'm not Haiti, Guarma, that chapter. And when you're in that was kind of based on a DR kind of Haiti vibe. They had a dialect coach for the Italians, wanted to make sure that they sounded authentically Italian, But no, not for me. I guess I
at it,
passed
huh?
the test.
Just naturally
But
good at it.
the Brits bought it, Alanah.
Dude, the first time that I realized that you weren't Southern, I was like, what the fuck? Not even American either. I was like, I think it might have even been at the Game Awards, that was the first time that I had heard you speak as you. And I was like, holy shit. Like, it's just completely shatters everything I knew.
It's like when Hugh Laurie showed up for House. Yeah. Well, I take that as a huge compliment. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Do you think that that's an important part of your job? That's not something I've spoken to anyone about on this show before. I mean, your accent, I don't know if it's one that gets casted as much, like your natural accent. Do you feel like you needing to know international accents is a huge thing?
I almost never work in my normal voice, ever.
Interesting.
Because I was all over the shop as a kid. So, if believe it or not, when I'm in Ireland, they think I'm American, and
Really?
and then I lived in the UK for a decade as well. So I'm able to do a lot of those regional accents pretty well, at least to a native standard. So I think that's what started me off with the voice acting career more so than a lot of my theater experience. But I'm really grateful for my theatrical experience because I think that really helped me do the performance capture,
Yeah.
because you got to have a lot of suspension of disbelief. You've got to have a good imagination when you're doing PCAP, because here we are trying to be tough cowboys in spandex,
Yeah. Spandex with the balls and the dots and everything. And yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Do you feel like the approach that you have to acting in PCAP performance capture or acting on stage, are they vastly different? Like, do you have to move differently? What are some of the major differences between those two very physical kinds of acting?
Oh, that's a good question. So it depends. Like, PCAP for gaming is slightly different for performance capture for cinema. We're going to see that a lot when Avatar 2 comes out next month.
Yeah.
But typically in gaming, when you're doing PCAP, it's usually an in-game. I did all the animations, so except for major stunts. So even the in-game animations is me too. So
I didn't realize none of that was just animators. Yeah. Wow.
All of it was me.
That's a lot of work.
Me and Rob Weedoff shared the side missions. We would, because depending when you play it could be either or. So we shared doing the side missions. He might do the mocap for one. Then I would ADR to his motion afterwards.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but to go back to what I was saying, it's all in the details for me, and that's why I was so grateful for the animators when they would show me the environment of wherever we were. So I'd go, okay, if we're in the swamp, I'd remember to swat for the odd fly that wasn't there, or if we were up in the mountains, I'd remember to be chilly, and add all that, add those little tiny things in for authenticity. But I'm really grateful for my theatrical experience as well, because the audience is right there. You learn in real time what does and doesn't work. Like if you work on film, your performance might not be on the receiving end of an audience for a year, 18 months afterwards, and by then it's too late. But if you're doing the same show every night on stage, over time you start to learn what does and doesn't work, and then that helps with everything else, that every other medium that you perform in, and I felt that maybe it did for gaming as well.
Yeah, do you feel like the physicality of them is super different?
So if it's a cutscene, it's more cinematic. If it's in game, then you got to remember it's probably a much wider shot. The player's looking at your back, so then you can afford to be a bit more theatrical, and you want to be a little bit bigger.
That's a lot to think about.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I guess. And now these days the editing is so good they can seamlessly blend in from in-game to cutscenes and vice versa. But that was one of the things I always wanted to know. And you usually could tell by the script, but sometimes you couldn't. Is this in-game or is this going to be a cutscene? And if it is a cutscene, what kind of camera angle are you thinking? But they could change their mind in post if they wanted to. But
that's true, and there's a lot of cameras. You can make anything they want work, really.
You can move it, put it wherever you want. Yep.
Do you have
That's one of the things that blows my mind about God of War, because they stuck with the one track, the oneer. The whole game's a oneer.
It's so hard, Roger. It's so hard. You have no idea how hard it is.
I've been thinking about it, and no, I'm sure I can't, but I can appreciate how hard it is. But it works. It's so good.
Yeah, and
it really helps with the immersion.
Yeah, there were periods of God of War 2018 where people were like, it's not going to work. We have to drop it. It's not going to work. But Corey was just so stubborn about keeping it. And I think I agree. It really helps with immersion. You just feel like you're always in it. And it's very impressive and very challenging. So I'm glad you liked it. Before the show started, Roger was just telling me that he just finished Ragnarok.
Just finished it today.
Hell yeah. Is that how you spend your Thanksgiving?
Well, no, I was cooking. I was cooking for 13 people yesterday.
Oh, wow.
I smoked
still found
2
time.
turkeys.
Nice. All right.
I caught up on. I finished Ragnarok today.
Very good. Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. So do you have a favorite kind of acting? Like, is there something that if I were to tell you got to do this tomorrow, is it performance capture? Is it theater? Is it film? And how different do you feel like they are?
Well, I feel most experienced now in theater and performance capture, and I love both. But honestly, I just love to work, and I love new challenges. I've got a few projects in the gaming industry now coming up, and that's been a real joy. And another real cool thing is to see the technology advance in front of your very eyes. You know, even sometimes when you're working on the same project and you go, oh my God, they can do that now?
Yeah.
For example, a lot of the in-game animations that some of those took weeks and weeks to do with Red Dead, and now I'm working on games where they can get it done in half a day. You know, and they need less data in the volume to be able to translate it into what they need for in-game. It just blows my mind.
It's one of the coolest things about working in video games is that it's still in its infancy. We're still just evolving every day all the time. It's very, very cool to watch.
Yeah. I think AI is going to bring some really cool things to the NPC world. And
true.
You know.
Yeah. Not having to do all that stuff by hand, it takes a long time. And the faster we can get and the more memory we can get, the cooler games are going to get. It's definitely very exciting. So you have a preference for anything physical. And I'd love to ask, like, what goes into when you're trying to come up with the physicality of a character, any character, though I guess Arthur's the easiest one for me to reference. How much are you thinking about like what he's going to be wearing at the time, even if you're in a mocap suit? Do you have your head on like, well, I'll have cowboy boots on, I'd have a belt here. Like, is that stuff that you just consciously think about all the time?
Yes. Yeah. And also where's their center of gravity? How do they walk? You know, and what mood are they in and which particular part of scene, and how does that affect the way that they walk? And typically I try not to prepare the same way. Every time I have a different role, I try to prepare for it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if I just keep doing the same thing, I'll just keep coming up with the same thing. So there's some things I've used in the past was to like use animal work, you know, and try and take inspiration from certain members of the animal kingdom,
that's
like bears
interesting
and what have you, and then and obviously with regards to Red Dead, anyway, I knew that Arthur's walk was going to be something that was going to be looked at quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was something that I was conscious of walking in. Absolutely. You know, and...
So what is the research that you do? Like, is that like a notebook? Is it like you mentioned before that you'd watch movies?
And I was playing a lot of games. And, you know, Andy Serkis is a huge inspiration, too, because of what he's done with mocap. And I was always trying to get whatever behind-the-scenes footage I could of Lord of the Rings and Planet of the Apes and other video games as well. You know, I mean, I know Nolan did it after Red Dead came out, but when he was doing that playthrough of the Uncharted series, I loved it because you got
So
to hear all
cool.
those behind the scenes stories.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be like, oh, yeah, I remember this day. And I
Mm-hmm.
lived for that and I could
Yeah.
relate. But and also, some if you're not well versed in performance capture as an actor, sometimes you don't know what the technological limitations are. And you learn pretty fast that the animator is just as valuable as the director, and oftentimes they work side by side in tandem with each other because the animator is they're the ones who can tell you what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
I remember so many times we'd come up with a scene, we'd be working at it and working at it, and eventually the director would be like, "Oh, thank God, that's brilliant, take that," and then the animator would step in and go, "No, sorry, we can't use that because this foot was 2 inches too far to the
Yeah.
left." And we're like, "What are you, crazy?"
There's also a lot of stuff to do with clothing. Like I think in The Last of Us Part 2, Ellie, I think, maybe takes her shirt off.
Right?
And it took somebody months and months and months and months to animate that. Like if
Yeah,
you move your clothing in a certain way, it becomes a
sure.
nightmare. I
Because the
know
straps of the gun over the shoulder,
all of
and
it.
yeah,
Troy
yeah.
mentioned there was
I can totally understand that.
I
Yeah.
think
Oh
initially
my
with
God.
Joel, he used to put his hand in his pocket a lot, and the animators had to be like, "That's so fucking hard. Can you please stop putting your hand in your pocket?"
Yeah. Can you stop folding your arms?
Yeah,
And and at a certain point, you have to go. Well, that's a very human thing that would happen now. And I would put my hands on my belt buckle that I
yeah,
imagined to be there.
yeah.
And the animator's like, "How'd you know there's a belt buckle there?" And I'm like, "Well, come on, there would be,
He's
wouldn't
a
there?"
cowboy.
So it's some of the things that I did would help lend to inform their work and vice
Yeah,
versa. And as the years went by, we got to understand each other's work more and more. So we became a pretty solid team. But after a while, I started to understand why the foot had to be 2 inches to the left. Because at the beginning, I'd be like, "What difference does it make? Come
two
on!"
inches. Yeah,
But then it helps. It helps with the immersiveness if you can just seamlessly blend into a cutscene without you don't even. Sometimes I don't even know it's a cutscene, and
yeah.
that's something that I really admire when I'm playing games now, and that happened a lot in Ragnarok too.
Yeah. I think the recent Tomb Raider games are really good at that too. I often don't know when I'm in a cutscene or a cinematic when they start, and I'll still be holding the controller because I think I'm moving, and I'm like, "Oh, this is the cutscene." It's super, super impressive. Yeah, it is. It's definitely a lot of learning, I guess, and I suppose like when you work on a game for that long with I assume a similar team, you probably just have to be very collaborative and become a tight unit. And I guess you do have to sometimes make a case against the animators where you'd be like, well, but he would be folding his arms here, and that's
Yeah,
I guess what you
sometimes
bring
we
to the team.
argued. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I created a lot of extra work for them too, because there'd be some moments where I'd be like, "Well, he would take his hat off to a lady." Yeah, but
Yeah.
Raj, we don't know if he's wearing a hat or not. All right, well then let's do two versions then. And they're
It
like,
makes sense.
"Oh."
Yeah, because you can lose the hat. You can lose the hat. You got to keep it in mind. Yeah, it's
But
definitely. Go
another
ahead.
difference too is, well, at least when you're the protagonist, anyways, it's like if you're working on film or something, you gotta. If you're the lead and if you're the protagonist, you need to get the audience on your side, and hopefully you need to do that as soon as possible for the sake of the narrative. But in gaming, if you're the protagonist or the playable character, a lot of that work is already done for you because the player identifies as you, so
True.
they're already on your side.
That's a really good
But
point. Yeah.
but the real challenge is, and we're seeing this more and more as storytelling gets more and more sophisticated, is there'll possibly be multiple endings, which is
Yeah.
influenced by the player's behavior. So when you get to like the latter half of the story, you've got to come up with obviously they might have different scenes for the same part of the story, and for major plot points that will always be the case, but sometimes for lesser plot points it'll be the same sides.
Hmm.
And then you got to come up with a performance that's ambiguous enough to suit whether they're a bastard or high honor or low honor, or whether they're doing this branch of the narrative or the other branch of the narrative. You've got to come up with a performance that fits both,
Yeah.
but still loyal to the character that the player's been getting used to this whole time.
Yeah, and I guess with
That,
Red Dead, it's morality too. Like you can kind of play Arthur as a dick. So
I
you,
was the morality. That was my binary thing, was whether he's a good guy or a low honor guy. But with
yeah.
other stories like Mass Effect, for example, is different. And that juggling that in your head, that was a bit of a challenge.
It's also very hard to write. I don't think I'm allowed to say what game it was for yet, but I wrote branching narrative for a game, and writing those scenes where like you have to write for players to have a choice of what to say, but you have to make sure that every single option makes sense with every other option, so that you don't have like a what was it, LA Noire, where someone is just suddenly very mad. Like the previous sentence, they were like, interesting. And then they're like, no, you killed someone. And it's like makes the characters all really weird. It's really hard to do. And what I was doing to try to get through that was just repeatedly read through every single option out loud. Because otherwise,
it's not easy.
No, you just make people sound crazy.
It's mathematical almost.
Yeah. It's very technical. A lot of art in where video games are concerned, I think, is very technical. At least, like, I would think less so than theater. I look at theater as a more of a generic performance art. Generic's not the right word, but it's just like more art. I don't know. It's not that video games aren't, but they're so technical, and you have to think so technically all the time that it's not as romantic as I think maybe people expect it to be when you have to just factor all those things in.
Did you have choose your own adventure books when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
Totally. Read a lot of Goosebumps.
Although it's a lot more complicated now.
It's still kind of where it came from, though.
Yeah,
I'm rooted in the same place.
And I loved that because that empowered me.
Yeah.
As a kid, I found that very empowering.
Yeah, I love those. They're awesome. Yeah, I tried to write one once. It's too hard. Like the amount of it's like mapping the pages is hard. Being like, okay, wait, and then this goes to what page? Like it's super. I don't even know how people write those, but I used to read the Goosebumps ones, the scary ones. They were awesome.
And then you'd be like, oh, I died. Okay, go back to
No, I didn't. Like you just reload page. Yeah, it's that is totally a big inspiration for modern video gaming, like no doubt. So to take us very off track here, how did you actually start out? What was the beginning of your career as an actor? Did you always know that you wanted to be one, and where did it start?
I was involved with amateur dramatics when I was a kid, and it's something that I always enjoyed. But when I was a teenager, I didn't really have. I wasn't brave enough to think of pursuing it as a career. I didn't think, because I knew how fickle the industry was and how tough it was. So I started out in computers, which I was really bad at, and I eventually bit the bullet and figured to myself,
you mean like engineering?
I did what you would call in the States an associate's degree in computer studies.
Oh, no way!
Yeah,
cool.
And then I sucked at it, so then I transferred to a BA in theater, and. It was hard at first, it was hard, but the first 10 years of my career, I was struggling, but I was working, and I'm very grateful for the experiences that I had, especially starting out, Theater it really taught me everything.
You started theater acting in the UK?
Yeah.
Were you working for like one of those productions or theater companies where you got paid absolutely nothing?
Yeah,
because I feel like that's pretty common there. It's like you get paid like £1, like just nothing.
My first job was what they call these TIE contracts, theater and education, where you go around and just do Shakespeare to kids at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they don't want to be there. And that was wonderful. Kids are a very honest audience.
It's true.
If you suck, yeah.
What ages are you doing that to?
Oh, this would have been around adolescent kids. I remember. So we would do like bite-sized Shakespeare, so bits and bobs from different plays, and it would last like half an hour to 10 to 12-year-olds. And there was sometimes some of it was insane. I remember one kid it was a fight broke out, and he's throwing another kid up on the stage and everything. And
wow!
And the teachers love it because they're finally like, oh, finally a bit of a break. They're not doing anything.
Oh God! From the Shakespeare, man. Yeah, harsh way to start, but it seems like that's common in the UK. Is that you start getting paid absolute pennies and just working where you can. I've heard stories of people saying...
Great way to start. You got to pay your dues, right?
Yeah, I've heard people saying that they were paid less money than it costed them to get to their job as actors starting out in the UK.
Yeah,
which is wild.
Yeah, that can happen.
Yeah.
That can happen.
So then where do you go from there?
And then I started doing proper theaters then from that. And then around the same time, I eventually moved to London because that was where most of the work in the UK
of course.
is. I trained in Wales and Cardiff, and if you speak Welsh, you can do pretty well as an actor in Wales, but I did not speak Welsh, so London was the next stop, and I started to book more theater there, proper theater, and a bit of film and TV work as well, and that's when I got into voiceover, and I would do the accents that I was comfortable with, so I would do American and Irish, and I didn't get hired too much as a Brit in Britain, because for some reason they didn't, they knew where I was from, so I didn't.
They bought it.
But as soon as I moved back to the States, my pigeonhole increased by a whole third then, because then I could finally get away with doing the Brit, And I moved to New York and then carried on just doing what I did there and I never gave up. Yeah. Probably should have a few times, but I'm glad I didn't now, looking back on it.
Yeah. What was your first video game?
I think it was The Witcher. I did a bit of voice on The Witcher, the first one. That was mostly cast out of London. Oh. Yeah. And then I did, my first ever voiceover gigs was for a slot machine. So I guess it was called Reservoir Frogs.
Excellent. Yeah, very good.
They needed a Michael Madsen sound alike.
Oh my God.
So I just went on and it was a couple of hours and I was mostly just me just rhyming off fruit. So I go cherries, bananas,
oh my God,
lemons.
That's amazing.
And I remember the cover art. It was a frog holding a human ear.
Look it up. Reservoir Frogs.
Yeah. And that was I say slot machine because that's what the Yanks understand, but the Brits know them as fruit machines.
Fruit machines, really?
Yeah, and they're in every bar.
We have them in a lot of bars in Australia too, yeah. That is weird that you can't do that here, can you?
No.
Wow, Reservoir Frogs. I found it.
Is it there?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I haven't looked that up for ages.
That's so funny. Wow. So, yeah.
That was my first game, I guess you could say.
It counts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine that's a weird introduction to video games and wasn't necessarily one that was going to make you be like, I want to pursue this. This is a path. Did you ever
thrilled to get a job?
For sure. Thrilled. Right. You're just happy to have work at that point. Did you ever have aspirations to be a video game protagonist? Or when you were starting out acting, was your attitude just, I just want work? There was no like goal that you had in mind?
No, I just wanted to be challenged, but I never anticipated that I would slip into gaming somehow. I never thought that would happen.
You thought it would stay theater or?
Yeah, I was doing pretty well with the theater company out of Germany. I worked for them for over a decade. We went all around the world, and that was where I was in Australia with that company. Yeah. And there was always work with those guys.
Yeah.
And it was hard to make a living, but you could just about do it. I wouldn't be able to do it now, but back then I could.
Yeah.
And, you're living, it was like the rock and roll lifestyle. You're living out of a suitcase in a different hotel every night, different theater every night, except not the money but apart from that, it was very rock and roll.
I like that kind of travel. It's fun, but you're right. Great. Not the money or the fame.
No.
Just a nice suitcase lifestyle.
Yeah.
If you were to go back Europe. I mean, that sounds awesome. It's like you got to tour the world. I got to go to Australia. Nobody gets to do that. If you were to give yourself advice from when you were just starting out, what do you think that you would say? Like when you were just beginning.
Oh, wow. Yeah, don't take all the rejection personally. Especially when it is personal, because sometimes it is. But most of the time it's something that you have no control over. I don't know what's the one thing about this industry is it's so fickle and talent is no guarantee. And there's so many talented actors out there who don't get the same opportunities as others. And it's really just like throwing a ball up in the air. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I would wish that on anyone. But it's what I ended up doing. And once I was invested in it, I was invested in it. So I would tell myself not to give up and just to remember that something will come eventually. Every no brings you closer to your next yes.
It is.
I think it's a big sales pitch.
No, but
it's true.
I was just talking to Danielle about this, who was on the last episode, about the amount of rejection that I feel like actors have to face. I don't think most people could deal with, and I think it's more than most people think. Like the fact that you have to study your sides, get to know a character fleetingly, submit a tape or see people in person, and then they just never contact you again. You've used your profession to create something for them, and then they just ghost you.
It wasn't good enough, sorry. But no, it oftentimes you have to remind yourself, you don't know what they want.
You might not be tall enough.
And that's sometimes it's usually something completely out of your control, which makes it a little easier. But since COVID, there's hardly any auditions in person anymore. Yeah. So we're all doing stuff on tape, and we don't get the same feedback as we used to. Yeah. I miss that.
Yeah.
I miss that, chatting to a casting director who's chatted to the producer or the director and actually has firsthand information of what it is that they're looking for. Since COVID, we don't really get that anymore.
Yeah,
So
you
it's
get
much
nothing.
more of a shot in the dark. But the one advantage is if you're not happy with it, you can just do it again and
That's true.
send that one. But it's much more of a shot in the dark now.
Do you have any advice for people trying to submit auditions, or like anything that you try to stand by? Like, I know one thing that that at least Santa Monica Studio has looked for is just people making a choice, just really committing to doing something with the character, even if it's wrong.
Even if it's the wrong choice, at least show that you've done some work.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that you
That's
stand
so
out.
true. Yeah, and it's so much easier to turn it down than to turn it up. You know, so if you do make a choice, commit to it and make it clear and obvious, you know, because it's much easier to pull it back than to turn it up again, because they might not think you can turn it up.
True.
But my gosh, you know what else I've started to learn too is I've realized the breakdowns are more for the agent than the actor. You know, the breakdowns is more of a clue so that the agent knows, okay, well, this client fits that client fits that. But the actors shouldn't pay so much attention to it, because if they pay too much attention to it, then everybody's going to be sending in the same audition.
Good point.
You've got to add a bit of your own personal stamp to whatever the sides are. You know, you've got to make it unique as well as make your own choices clear, but you've got to make it yours as well, because there's nothing else that will help you stand out from the rest.
You're absolutely right. If they all sound the same, then it's just going to be down to, I don't know, this guy kind of looks right. Like it's going to be not even based on acting, really, if you all submit the same thing. It's a really good point.
And this one's based in LA, so we don't need to fly them in or get a hotel. I mean, it comes down to that, really.
Yeah,
too,
it's true.
You know?
Yeah, very good point. Do you have any advice for people who might want to get into acting, or people who are just starting out?
Don't. No, I'm joking. No, you know, just realize that it's not. I think there will be difficulties, you know, and if you throw enough shit on the wall, something will stick eventually.
Yeah, definitely a don't give up, because it's just such a competitive industry.
And work begets work, even if it's something that it might not initially attract your attention. You know, it's any opportunity to show your wares to someone who hasn't seen them before should be taken.
That's a very good one. I
would say that for people who started out, and focus on theater too, because theater you learn in real time. You know, you never hear half of the room laugh. You know, you never hear half of the room boo. The audience is like one entity usually. And when you learn how to feed them, and when you learn how to listen to your audience as well as they're listening to you, that's when some magic can start to happen. And then you can take that with you to other mediums like film and whatnot. Except now, instead of an audience, you just got to imagine your audience is that tiny little hole on the lens, you know, and hyper focus your performance to that audience member. But when you learn how to cater, and it helps you with timing too, you know, because you're doing the same material every night.
Yeah.
So often you'll get a laugh one night, and then the next night you won't get a laugh at all, even though you've tried twice as hard for it. And oftentimes the reason why you didn't get a laugh is because you tried twice as hard for it. So you learn how to make it appear natural every time, and you learn not to spoon feed your audience and to let them figure some stuff out themselves, because that's what audiences like to do. You know, they like to use their brains.
I guess the tip there is, in part, try to fail a little so that at least you learn from it.
Yeah. Failure is the best teacher.
Yeah, more productive than just succeeding all the time and not taking any risks. You probably won't go anywhere and you won't learn anything.
Happy accidents are sometimes the best teachers.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my God, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. So when it comes to Arthur Morgan specifically, so you got that role. You were working on that for 5 years, which is such a long time. And you said you were nervous about taking over from John. How did you feel when the game came out and everybody finally met Arthur? What was that experience like?
Well, it was very encouraging. Everybody seemed to it was mostly a positive response, which I was very grateful for. I was just aiming that we wouldn't disappoint the fans of the franchise. And I don't think we did that. So I'm very, very thrilled.
Did you watch a lot of like Let's Plays or streams or any of that kind of stuff?
No, I didn't. I have, maybe over COVID I did.
Yeah.
There's a whole montage of just people bawling their eyes out.
Yeah.
Spoilers. Which I did not expect at all. Even Markiplier's had a little bit of a tear in his eye from one of the things I've seen. Yeah.
The moment in that game that I will never get over that stands out to me so much is you're riding back to the camp, the one that's like by the river. And I was sure that I was riding Arthur to his death because he dies because he has to. And so there's this really interesting thing that Red Dead 2 manages to do that I don't know of many other games that do, where if you know that the character is going to die because it's a prequel, he's not there anymore. I felt so responsible for him all the time that I was like, if I finish this ride, is Arthur gonna die? And then he starts coughing, and you're like, no, what's happening? Then I feel like
I have to know what happens next.
Yeah, and you don't want to stop, but there is a world where I was like, if I just stop playing, Arthur can live forever. Maybe I just leave him alone, and then he doesn't have to die. And it's very, very impactful in a way that I don't think a lot of games have even attempted to do.
That's one of the things I was grateful for because it was very similar to the first Red Dead Redemption, and that the person you play meets their demise before the game is finished. But I loved the way that they'd made it different from John, because John is this short, sharp shock that you're not expecting, and with Arthur it's this slow burn
of when is it going to happen.
Yeah, and
what does his life mean? And
it makes him question his whole life, and it changes his whole approach, and indeed in some ways the player's approach too to what we're doing,
and how you spend your time and who you spend it helping is I just feel like it's such a powerful thing of like feeling responsible for Arthur being alive.
So loads of dynamite and Saint Denis, killing as many people as he possibly can. It's those are the teenage boys usually.
It's just so epic.
It's kind of fun. So every once in a while you can find a little alleyway, a narrow alleyway in Saint Denis, make a mountain of cops. It's a lot of fun too. And then if you get your honor down too low, you just say hello to everyone for about 20 minutes, and that brings it back up.
What a nice guy.
Yeah.
The KKK.
Oh, look at him. He threw the fish back. Oh, high honor.
Wave. The KKK got me. When you see the KKK in that game,
and you don't get punished.
No,
and then the eugenics guy in Saint Denis too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Your honor doesn't drop.
Yeah. Oh, the KKK thing was like one of the only times in those games. Like even in GTA, I'm a person who will like mostly try not to run over pedestrians. And I was like tying them by the leg and trying to feed them to alligators and shit. Like I was like, oh really?
If you don't do anything, and if you just leave them alone and just watch them for ages, one of the cutscenes, they end up lighting themselves on fire.
Oh, do they really? I didn't know that. No way. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it must have been from my perspective, it must have been a very welcoming experience becoming Arthur Morgan and having, everybody just fall in love with him. So
it was an honor and a blessing. It really was an honor and a blessing to be involved in a project like that, because everyone, I mean, Rockstar top shelf in my opinion, and so is Santa Monica too. Obviously, I reckon I think there's the blessed trinity of video games: there's Naughty Dog, Santa Monica, and Rockstar.
I definitely agree with that right now.
As far as performance is concerned, and it was a pleasure. Because everyone's so intelligent and everyone's so talented, and there's no weak link, and everyone has the common goal. And it was just a real joy to be part of something like that. And then for it to be received in a positive way, like it has been, that's just every actor's dream come true, to have an audience, an appreciative audience of that size.
Totally.
I keep pinching myself.
Were you nervous at all, like before release day, waiting to
Oh,
to
yeah,
see what
absolutely.
Thought?
Yeah, absolutely. They're like, Arthur, who? Oh.
Oh, I can't even imagine. It is I hadn't thought about it in that way, that it is a big shadow to live up to, and the fact that you had played the game and had that context just must have done something to your brain for sure.
I was playing all the Rockstar games while I was making it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, no pressure.
Did you read all the reviews? Like, were you paying attention to the review embargo?
A little bit. Yeah. And some of it was pretty amazing. Although one guy did complain because he wasn't allowed to call his horse Shit Factory. And to that guy, all I can do is sincerely apologize.
That's not fair. Yeah, you should apologize. Can you write the apology down, please? Put it on Twitter.
Oh, I've forgotten how to get in contact with him, but who knows how long Twitter's going to last, Alanah, right?
I know. You got to get that apology out stat. I'm going to look up Shit Factory.
So sorry you couldn't call him Shit Factory. Yeah, you can't name your horse any naughty words.
It does seem odd.
Hmm.
Shit Factory. I'm trying to see if I can find it on Google if it comes up, but it might not. Oh, there's a tweet about you talking about it. That's funny.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, okay. There are a few results for Shit Factory, so people have spoken about you saying that. That's so funny.
Maybe you can do it online. Maybe you can use profanity online. Who knows?
Oh, surely. I mean, I was trying to call, I've been playing the latest Pokemon game, and I wanted to call my main Pokemon dipshit. Pokemon wouldn't let me. But you look at him, he's such a dipshit. He just looks like a dummy. And I was like, wow, no dipshit. Got it. Devastating.
That's nanny state for you.
Exactly. When will it end? The censorship of Nintendo. Come on. Yeah, I don't know. I just can't. I mean, having just, worked on Ragnarok and seeing the reviews and everything, it was definitely a little bit overwhelming.
It's been really well received and well done on the accessibility too, Alanah, because I know, honestly, I have heard a lot of people really, really highly praising that aspect of it. And I know that
it is very good. Yeah.
Sony's been really good at that lately. And I haven't accessed all the I looked at the menu and I was like, holy cow, you've taken it up a notch.
Yeah, the team is incredible, run by Mila, who is wonderful, and they really care. There were so many things when working on the accessibility stuff that I'd be like, hey, could we do this? And someone would say, well, we'll try, and if we can't do it for this game, we'll do it for the next game. Every time. It was always like, there was never a no. There was never a bit expensive. It just wasn't an option to say no. It was always, we will always do the most that we can, and it's really important to the studio. And I do think Sony's really good at it, actually. Like, The Last of Us Part 1 is probably the most accessible game ever made, and it is very good. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. I mean, it's
the remake. I haven't played the remake. Have they? I gotta check that out. I think that might be next. Beautiful. That I want to check out Modern Warfare 2. I haven't played a Call of Duty game in so long, but Modern Warfare 2 looks really cool.
Do you play multiplayer games at all?
No, I'm too bad. I don't have the time. Yeah. I can't compete with these 11-year-olds.
Call of Duty 11-year-olds
3 or 4 hours a day.
They're so good so fast. I can't do Call of Duty. I could do Battlefield. Call of Duty's too fast, and they're all angry.
Oh. Right, and then they tell you to do things to your mother. I know. Who wants that?
But they did something to your mother. What is my mom up to? Dear God.
Yeah. My mom is not. No, it's me. It's my fault I'm shit.
That I'm doing this to my own mother. Because I didn't realize that you played games so much. What's your favorite game?
Red Dead 2. No,
that's cheating. Come on.
I was a big gamer, and I play it occasionally now. Recently, I really enjoyed Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us 2. I really enjoyed the Final Fantasy VII remake, especially the music. Like, they got a full-blown Square Enix got this full-blown orchestra this time. And I remember playing it originally, and it was all it was just the monophonic. Mm-hmm. But now with the full-blown orchestra, that blew my mind. And I grew up on Street Fighter 2. I was like, I'm the first generation that grew up on video games. So I had an Atari, and then a Nintendo, and then a Super Nintendo, and then a PlayStation. And Final Fantasy, Resident Evil 2, Street Fighter 2.
Oh, yeah.
All that stuff.
Good video games. You still play Resident Evil?
No, I haven't in a while now.
They're really good these days. The remakes are fantastic.
That's insane.
Well, you're also currently working on a horror game, or at least did just work on a horror game. It's not out yet.
Yeah, me and Troy. We're putting the finishing touches on it. They apparently will be out next year, but you never know.
How is that experience working on something that's horror?
Oh, it was a brilliant thing. But this is set on Mars, so it's no Western at all. But working with Troy, who's one of the best in the business, that was a real pleasure. And I've gotten to know him as a colleague and a friend now, which was wonderful. But working with him was really cool, and seeing how the technology, like earlier, like it had been a while since I had been in a volume. So seeing how the technology had gotten better, and I'm really excited to show the gaming audiences a different side of me as opposed to just Arthur, because this fella is not Arthur. That's by any means.
Seems very different to Arthur. What's the character's name? I don't remember. Are you allowed to say?
Jack Leary.
There you go. That's it. Yeah.
Jack Leary.
Yeah. What accent are you doing?
He's Irish.
He is Irish. That must feel nice too. I thought he was.
It's one of the few things I've done in my own voice.
That's awesome. Yeah. But when you're approaching something that has jump scares, when it comes to mocap. How does that work? I guess the character isn't usually jumping.
It's typically more in game because it's
Yeah.
obviously it's something that the player needs to do to preempt to spawn. So that's typically in game, but I would have to do the reactions. Yeah.
And
That was a lot of
and
fun.
how does that work? How do you approach doing horror? I have no idea. I've never asked anyone the question before. How does horror mocap work?
Well, it's a lot like comedy. It's all about the timing.
Yeah.
But then it's hard because sometimes you're not in control of the timing because sometimes the player might hang around
Right.
and not do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
So you have to try and find a way to keep the tension up, even though you might not have control over the timing. That's the challenge,
Yeah.
But people are getting better at kind of nudging the player in the right direction.
Yeah.
Like herding them almost. Like we're like the sheepdogs of the PS5 and
Totally.
the Xbox world,
There are a lot of tricks for that, like just even lines. Like
Absolutely.
if the hallway looks like it points this way, then people just are drawn to it automatically.
Actually kind of go that direction. Yeah, absolutely. And then you'll have a little red herring and then the real scares immediately after. Yeah,
is that stuff
brilliant.
all on the page? Like this, is that all in the script?
Typically, no.
Interesting.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but you've got to perform it.
Yeah. Yeah, it must be a weird one. I don't know. I guess that's why you are where you are and I am not. Is like I can't imagine being scared of something that is probably a lot of the time not even there because of mocap, right?
It's not. Well, then that's where my gaming helps me out. I think, is this like that bit in Alien? What was it? Resurrection, right?
Isolation.
Alien Resurrection. Was that, which one is it called?
Isolation, probably. I'm sure Resurrection also exists, but you're almost definitely thinking of Isolation.
No, Isolation was the good one from like almost 10 years ago. Yeah.
Is it 10 years old? It might be.
It must be, right?
Isolation. It was the...
it was so well done. It was so well done.
2014. Jesus, that is a long time.
It's 8 years. So, and the thing is, you don't see the alien until like well over a third of the way in the game. And that's the way to do it too. You got to build it all. You got to build that tension.
So I actually, and I tell people this all the time. I saw the alien before anyone knew you could.
No way.
Yeah. The alien killed me far sooner in that game than I had seen anyone else die anywhere on the internet at the time. I'm sure more people have done it now. But when the game came out, I played it in 2014 and I recorded it. The first time the alien kills me is right before you first get on the tram station, which is maybe 2 hours in. I had never seen that happen to anyone else. And I think that's a credit to how cool that game is the way that alien AI works.
Maybe you found a shortcut to death. Maybe it was just you.
I died real early, like way before.
Yeah. I didn't meet it took me ages to find.
Yeah, because I think it's always there. It's just not always necessarily going to attack you. So, yeah, that game is fantastic. And you're right that being a gamer probably does help and adds assists your imagination at the very least. I can imagine it would be very difficult if you don't have that. Also, for the record, everybody, the game we're talking about is Fort Solace.
Yes,
because we didn't say the name.
I didn't say the name.
Fort Solace, which you and Troy are in, and I'm very, very excited to play it. I know some of the at Summer Game Fest was where you guys spoke about it.
We introduced it with Jeff's thing, Summer Game Fest. We're very excited to show it to you all. Fort Solace, Solace spelled Solis. You can check out the trailer on YouTube right now. I think it's going to come out next year. It's going to be on PC and PlayStation.
Very excited.
Those are confirmed. We're waiting on other stuff.
Yeah. I know Troy explained it as, I think while he was there, he just commented on it being like constantly thrilling. He was like, he would describe it more as a thriller than a horror and said it just had a lot of tension all the time. And he seemed to be very enthusiastic about that. So
you might need some new underwear.
Is it weird that excites me for video games? Scare the shit out of me. Let's go. I want to do it. I love it so much. Yeah. So for all of the games that you have worked on, like, are they vastly different?
Not a lot, to be fair, compared to Troy. My gosh, I'm a rookie.
But that's too many. Who needs to work on that many? All right, Troy, come on now. It's pipe down a little bit. All right, calm down.
There's a reason he keeps. Yeah,
he's incredible, it's interesting. I think it's very nice that every actor that I ever talk to who works with Troy is always like, I got to work with Troy, and everyone like seems to love working with him, and he does directing now too, and.
Yeah.
Supposedly people think he's a fantastic director of actors because he has the experience of being an actor. So Troy is great at what he does. But for the difference of recording something like Fort Solis and recording Red Dead, would you say they are so different that it is almost like recording a Western movie and then recording a horror movie? Or because of the volume and because of the cameras and the mocap suit, they're not that different? Is your approach as different as we picture it being?
No, it was very different because the team is different. The technology had advanced.
Yeah.
And it is a completely different genre, as you point out. Yeah, so it was an entirely different approach.
So I guess it's not just like all video game acting fits into a blanket. It is still extremely different depending on the context of the game.
And I had to change my walk too, because I obviously, for obvious reasons, I didn't want people to go, "Oh, it's Arthur," but at the same time, you know, I'm wearing a totally different outfit. I'm wearing a spacesuit in this one, so you know the movement is a little bit more labored, you know, and it's on. We were trying to incorporate some aspects of the Martian gravity and what have you, and the storms, and so yeah, it was a very, very different way to. And that's what I love about it, because the performance capture has the capacity for all of that different types of freedom. You know, you really the whole scope of performance capture, and it's only getting better and better. You can literally do anything.
Yeah,
the limit's your imagination.
Did you happen to talk to Troy about the Love, Death, and Robots episode that he did?
Yes. I watched it and I told him he was awesome at it. That was the one on the pirate ship, right?
Yeah. And he is so good, but we had an episode where we spoke to him about it of Play, Watch, Listen, where he was talking about the like giant crab thing and how it was animated. It's nuts.
So well done.
So cool.
And it's in typical Troy fashion. I was like halfway through it before I started to go, hang on, is that Troy?
I know. I knew he was in the season and I was like, I think this is the Troy one. That might be Troy. But then there's also like so many games that I play where Troy's voice shows up and I get mad. I'm like, I can't fucking escape this guy. Like he's in everything. It's so funny.
Like a bad penny.
Except a very good one.
There was that other great one on Love, Death, and Robots where it was kind of in the jungle. And there was this siren who had kept coming in and out of the water.
I haven't seen that.
And she was done up all like Indian makeup and stuff. That was done, because I'm not sure Troy's episode was mocap, was it? Was it animated?
I think it was mocap. I think it was a combination of the two. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, this other one was also mocap, but it blew my mind, and they started using Unreal 5 on some of that too, didn't they?
Yeah.
Or maybe the most recent season.
Yeah.
So Fort Solis, apparently, I don't know, don't quote me on this, it depends if it gets delayed further or not, but this might very well be the first video game that is completely done in the Unreal 5 engine.
That's very exciting. I mean, it does look gorgeous. It looks incredible. Yeah.
I like what they did with the storms, the Martian sandstorms. They look really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's the thing, that when you're working on it, you don't necessarily know what that looks like until you eventually see it, right? You don't necessarily know what the thing you're working on actually looks like, depending on what.
I did a lot of research on. Do you know it's not sand? It's rust.
Really?
All the dust, all the sand, it's rust. It's oxide, iron oxide that blows around.
Whoa.
Yeah. And if it were to get into your lungs, you're done.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
It's rust. Yeah.
Wow. Good to know. Does that change how you approach anything, or is it just a cool fact?
I don't know. Oh, I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, we don't want to spoil anything. That game's still a ways away, but very exciting. So I won't steal too much more of your time. Last question that I like to ask people on this show, because I think it's an extra tough one. Also, is that Guinness? No, that's not. That's too see-through to be Guinness. But it would have been very on brand. It's just a dark beer.
Cheers.
Cheers.
The first one was Guinness, and this now I've graduated to Sam Adams.
Very good. It's very cliche of you to drink Guinness. To be honest, you're a walking stereotype.
I am, yeah. I am.
Who is your favorite actor? Your favorite actor of all time, or your favorite performance of all time?
Oh, that's really hard to say.
I know.
I can't. But Daniel Day-Lewis is up there.
He's very good.
Yeah, I like Gene Hackman as well.
Yeah, also
love
very
Gene
good.
Hackman. There's a lot of Australian actresses that I love.
Yeah,
I love Kate. I think Cate Blanchett might be my favorite. Naomi Watts is amazing.
Yeah,
Nicole Kidman.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when my wife was pregnant with our first child, there was a Naomi Watts article that really helped me, because I was a nervous wreck. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to look? I wasn't doing exceptionally well. I was still bartending, I was like, how am I going to do this? And so terrified. And I read an article, Naomi Watts interview, and she said that she went through something similar when she was having her first child. But then after the child was born, she said you become more economic in your choices, because we were talking about choices earlier on. And so often, an actor will second guess themselves, and they're like, oh, that, and often we deny our first impulses because we don't trust ourselves enough, or we think, oh, that's probably not what they're looking for. And Naomi Watts said, I decided to start throwing all that stuff out of the window because she just simply didn't have the time to second guess herself. So she would trust her instincts more. And that helped me no end when I started having kids.
Because
still don't book any work, but I'm joking.
I guess then, your job isn't just for you anymore. It's for literal children. And that's definitely scary with that kind of job.
And it's okay sometimes it's okay if you don't have time. I mean, sometimes your first impulse is the best impulse, and to trust your instincts.
Fair enough. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Any closing thoughts? Anything else that you would like to share before I let you go?
No, is that an old school PlayStation emblem you got on there?
It is, yeah.
And I love the old one.
It is nice, isn't it?
I've got a windbreaker like that too. Yeah.
It drives me nuts that PlayStation was established in 1994 because I'm born in 1993, and all the merch, I'm like, just 1 year. Then what if all been established in 93? Come on, it would have been so nice. But That's crazy. Just from the staff store, we get crazy discounts. You can get like shirts for like $2. So I have a lot of PlayStation merch.
And to think Nintendo was like 1890s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when they started, it was a completely different kind of company. 1890, I'm going to guess 97. I had to do this in trivia once. When is it? Nintendo founded. God, Nintendo has so much money. God of War Ragnarok sold 5.1 million copies in a week, which is crazy. And then Nintendo of the latest Pokemon sold, I think, like 10 million in 3 days.
Well, it's cross-platform too. I mean,
well, they've only got 2
that issue. Okay.
For Pokemon, but it's still, people are buying 2, which is a lot.
I would wind Troy up about that too. I'd be like, oh yeah. It's pretty good sales, Last of Us. Yeah, not as good as Red Dead. Yeah, but you guys you got all the platforms. You got all the platforms.
That is Sony. That is true. It is true.
It's totally true.
But
that's amazing for Ragnarok. That's absolutely brilliant.
I was not expecting that number at all. So it's nuts. But then to get just absolutely slaughtered by Pokemon, which, to be fair, Pokemon is the highest grossing franchise of all time. Bigger than Mickey Mouse.
Bigger than Harry Potter.
Star Wars, Harry Potter, all of it. Pokemon.
Wow.
The highest grossing franchise of all time.
I hardly know anything about it.
I mean, you'd know Pikachu. And I think that's enough. They're Pikachu. Like, as long as you know Pikachu, we can sell Pikachu. That's all we need. It's like just so much money. It's crazy. But yes, Nintendo was founded in 1989, 133 years ago in Kyoto, Japan.
Oh, yeah. And what did they first sell?
I think it was a cards.
Like paintbrushes.
Let me check.
Cards. Yeah, that sounds right.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a card company. Cards. Yeah, it was originally called Nintendo Karuta, and they distributed flower cards, a traditional type of Japanese playing card. Crazy Nintendo stuff. Is commonly assumed to mean leave luck to heaven. Wow, isn't that cool? I didn't know that.
It's a flower card.
It's a me, a Mario.
We're gonna change the way we say that now. We gotta sound more.
It's like me, a Mario. That's how he sounds. The Mushroom Kingdom, here we come.
Here we go.
Here we go. It's so funny. My God. In any case, Roger, it was very lovely to talk to you today. Where can people find you?
Oh, my socials. So I am still on Twitter. We'll see for how much longer. That's at rclark98, and I got Instagram, Rolling Raj, and then I'm on TikTok too, Roger Clark Actor.
I didn't know you were on TikTok. I'll have to go check that out.
Yeah, I just started doing it on. I mean, that seems to be
voice actors is super fun to watch on TikTok.
Yeah, some of them are really good.
Yeah,
some of them are hilarious.
Yeah,
I'm not so much, but
but you're there.
I announce things, and I try to be amusing. I try to be as amusing as possible.
We appreciate that. I'll leave a link in the description to where everyone can find you. And is there anything you want to promote that you're working on right now?
Well, yeah, we've got Fort Solace coming up,
Mhm.
and I've got a range of audiobooks that you can find me on audible.com and also unbridledaudio.com. I got a few things that you might recognize the voice on some of them.
Cool.
And yeah, and you go onto my socials and I announce everything else. There's a feature film coming out this year,
Cool.
World War I horror movie called
Ooh.
Bunker.
Awesome.
A lot of we got some short films doing the rounds on the film festival circuit too. We might be letting people have a look at them online too. Watch this space.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll leave links below to where you can find out more from Roger. Thank you for joining me today, my friend, and
My pleasure.
thanks to everyone for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.
All the best, guys.